everyone, it's Jasmine, your local Vancouver, Washington realtor extraordinaire, and if you're watching this, you're probably gearing up for a big move from the beautiful beaches of Hawaii to the scenic Pacific Northwest here in Vancouver, Washington. Trust me, I've been there and it can be very overwhelming. The weather, the culture, the logistics, it's all so different, but with the right preparation, you can make the transition as smooth as possible, and I'm here to share 6 essential tips with you to help you along your journey. From figuring out how to ship your car overseas, to taking your pet with you, to even deciding how much money you should have saved, I've got you covered. Let's dive in. Tip number 1, shipping your car from Honolulu to Vancouver, Washington. Shipping your car from Hawaii to the mainland is a big step, and you'll want to plan ahead. Companies like Matson and Pasha Hawaii specialize in this sort of transport, but you'll want to book their services well in advance. Shipping costs can range anywhere between $1,000 and $2,500 respectively, depending on the size of your car and the specific service you're choosing. To avoid any last-minute stress, I recommend starting the booking process at least 1 to 2 months before your move. It's also important to keep in mind that it does take several weeks to ship your car up, and if you're moving to Vancouver specifically, Vancouver, Washington does not have a port. Our port is Tacoma, Washington, so you have to either fly back up to Seattle, take the train up to Seattle, pick your car up, and then drive it all the way back here to Vancouver. Before shipping, you'll need to prepare your vehicle. We thought that we could sneak some stuff in the trunk and then not have to ship as many things over, but you can't have anything in your car. Your car has to be essentially spotless. You also need to drain it of all fluids, so the tank can only be, I believe it was a quarter tank about 5 years ago. It might have changed since then. I would also recommend taking some photos of your car before you ship it. That way you know of any existing damage to your car, and if by some chance something happens while your car is being shipped, you have the documentation to prove, hey, I didn't have this scratch before, can you guys reimburse me? While you wait for your car to be shipped to Vancouver, it's important to line up some sort of transportation for yourself, whether it's getting a rental car or looking up Vancouver's public transit system. At least this way you're not stuck with no mode to get around. By preparing early and getting everything in order, shipping your car from Vancouver to Honolulu will be one less thing for you to worry about. Tip number 2, moving pets from Hawaii to Vancouver, Washington. Relocating pets from Hawaii to the mainland requires careful planning, and it starts with making sure you have all the right paperwork. Hawaii's strict pet travel guidelines, managed by the Department of Agriculture, requires your pet to have an up-to-date rabies vaccination and a health certificate from your vet. Relocating pets from Hawaii to the mainland requires careful planning, and it starts with making sure you have all the right paperwork. Hawaii's strict pet travel guidelines, managed by the Department of Agriculture, requires your pet to have up-to-date rabies vaccinations and a health certificate from your vet. Make sure to visit your vet well in advance of your move. It's also important to get your pet's health certificate issued to you within 10 days of departure, and be aware that some vaccines do take time to go into effect, so these are all things that I would consider. Create a checklist of all necessary documents and keep both hard copies and digital backups ready. Many airlines will require these at check-in, so having everything organized ahead of time is so essential. Now, let's talk about getting your pet on that flight. Some airlines allow smaller pets to travel in cabin, while larger pets may need to be transported in cargo. I have a Pomeranian Chihuahua. At the time, he was about 18 pounds, and I had to check him in as cargo. When we went to pick him up, he came out of baggage claim. So that's something that I would strongly consider if you do have pets. I know that there are some dogs that they won't even allow you to travel with. I think pugs are one of them. I think French bulldogs as well. But those are things that I would definitely look into if you are planning to move. Airlines like Hawaiian Airlines, Alaskan Airlines, and United Airlines offer pet-friendly options, but it's crucial to book early as there are limited spots for in-cabin pets. And again, look up the measurements of how big your pet needs to be even be in cabin. For in-cabin travel, it is essential to make sure your pet's carrier is small enough to fit under your seat. If your pet needs to go in cargo, ensure their crate is large enough for them to stand, turn around, and lie down comfortably. You'll also want to place a familiar toy or blanket in the crate to help them feel more at ease. I'd even put a puppy pad underneath the blanket, and before I shipped my dog with us, we did give him a little bit of CBD and Benadryl, so that's something that I would check with my vet as well. Timing is key here. Quarantine regulations in Hawaii are no joke. To avoid a lengthy stay in quarantine, make sure to meet all the pre-departure requirements, including the 5-day or less quarantine program. This allows your pet to skip the full quarantine period, provided their vaccines are up to date and you submit the necessary paperwork before travel. This is if you're moving from the mainland to Hawaii, because Hawaii doesn't have rabies. Once you arrive in Vancouver, your pet will need time to adjust. The Pacific Northwest climate is much cooler than Hawaii, so be prepared for a little bit of an adjustment period. That is normal. A great example is my dog Puff. He's very fluffy, a very, very furry dude. And at home, I felt like he was always hot. He always had his tongue out and he was always panting. When we first moved here, we moved in October, and so the first 6 months were pretty cold. We had to buy him a jacket and wrap him in blankets for months. He would literally shiver when he would go outside. So it was quite an adjustment, but now he's acclimated and I don't think he would survive back home anymore with how hot it is. One of the first things you should do while settling in is finding a new vet. Scheduling a checkup will ensure that your pet is healthy and well acclimated to their new environment. A local vet can also advise on any specific health concerns related to the cooler climate and different plants and allergens in Vancouver. You'll also want to explore all the local parks and dog parks specifically. Vancouver is home to plenty of dog parks, walking trails, and outdoor spaces where your furry friend can stretch their legs and get to know their new surroundings. By planning ahead, choosing the right airline, and preparing for both the journey and new environment, moving your pet from Hawaii to Vancouver can be a smooth and stress-free process. Tip number 3, saving enough money to move in the first place. Let's face it, moving from Hawaii to Vancouver is no small expense. Between shipping your car, your belongings, and buying plane tickets, these costs can add up very quickly. On average, you're looking at a total cost of anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 on the low end, depending on what you're moving with you. Think of it this way, off the top of your head already, we have our car shipping, which is $1,000 to $2,000. You have shipping your furniture and belongings, which range anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 respectively. Plane tickets for you and your family can range anywhere between $300 to $1,000 depending on what airline you go with. And then you're going to want your first month's rent and security deposit for wherever you move, and that can range anywhere between $1,000 to $3,000 depending on what you're looking for in terms of apartments or homes or whatnot. These are obviously all just estimates, but this gives you a good idea on how much you should have saved at the bare minimum. So, how do you prepare for such a big financial commitment? Start saving several months in advance. The sooner, the better. Create a savings plan where you set aside a portion of your income each month, aiming for a specific moving budget goal. Cutting out non-essential expenses can help speed up your savings as well. Think about canceling your subscriptions you don't use, eating out less, and holding off on big purchases until after you move. Another great way to raise extra cash is to sell items that you no longer need, whether it's furniture, clothes, old electronics. Decluttering before your move can really help lighten your load and pad your budget with extra money. If saving the full amount seems tough, there are resources that can help. Look into moving loans or budgeting apps like Mint or YNAB to track your progress. These tools can help you stay on top of your spending and make sure you're saving enough money. And here's the good news. While moving might seem expensive upfront, Vancouver's cost of living is generally much lower than Honolulu's, especially when it comes to housing, groceries, and utilities. So when you're getting settled, you might actually be saving money. By planning ahead, cutting unnecessary expenses, and making smart financial choices, you can save enough to cover the cost of your move and start a new life here in Vancouver without the added stress of financial strain. Remember, moving is an investment in your future. By sticking to a savings plan and managing your budget carefully, you'll be prepared to take on this exciting new chapter here in Vancouver. Tip number 4, scouting out apartments and homes in Vancouver, Washington. Obviously, one of the first things you're going to do when moving from Honolulu to Vancouver is finding a place to live. Luckily, there are plenty of online resources that can help you scout out apartments and homes before you even arrive. Websites like Zillow, apartments.com, and Craigslist are great places to start your search and get an idea of the market here. You can narrow down your search by using filters to specify things like budget, number of bedrooms, and amenities. Most of these these sites offer virtual tours as well, so if you're unable to visit in person, you can still get a sense of the layout and conditions of the property. If possible, and I highly recommend this, you should visit in person to get a feel for the area, but if that's not an option, consider working with a local real estate agent to help you. They'll know the neighborhoods and can help you find something that fits your lifestyle needs. Don't hesitate to ask for neighborhood-specific recommendations. Agents can point you in directions that align with your needs, like proximity to schools, parks, and public transportation. When choosing your new home, it's important to consider the neighborhood amenities. Are there good schools nearby? If you have kids, how close is the nearest grocery store, park, or public transportation stop? These details can make a huge difference in how comfortable you'll feel in your new home and your new neighborhood. You'll also want to think about the vibe of each neighborhood. Vancouver has a mix of urban, suburban, and more rural areas, so take some time to find a community that fits your preference and your needs. Some neighborhoods are quieter and more family-friendly, while others are closer to the downtown area and have a more active city-like feel. When I first moved here, I thought I wanted to live in Seattle because, as we all know, Honolulu is a bustling city. It is very much like LA in my opinion, but we ended up moving pretty much to a suburban neighborhood, and I'm really glad that we did make that choice because as someone that comes from noise pollution and I lived right by a fire department back on Oahu, it is nice to have peace and quiet. It's something that I never thought I would get used to, but I really appreciate not hearing sirens going down the street at all hours. Another important thing to keep in mind is seasonal rental availability. Vancouver is home to several colleges, and rental demand spikes during the fall when students are looking for housing. If you can, aim to move during off-peak seasons like spring or early summer to find better deals and more availability. By using your online resources, taking virtual tours, and considering the neighborhood amenities and availability, you'll be one step closer to finding the perfect home here in Vancouver. Whether you're renting or buying, planning ahead will make your transition smooth and more enjoyable. And remember, researching your options early will help you avoid the stress of last-minute decisions. Tip number 5, shipping your belongings and furniture. One of the biggest decisions you'll face when moving from Hawaii to Vancouver is whether to ship your large items like furniture or buy new ones when you arrive. Shipping costs can get pretty high, especially for heavy or bulky items. On average, shipping large pieces like couches, tables, and beds cost a significant amount, and sometimes it's more cost-effective to buy new or used furniture once you arrive in the mainland. If you do decide to ship some belongings, companies like Matson offer sea freight services that specialize in moving goods from Hawaii to the mainland. For smaller, more urgent items, services like FedEx Freight are a great option, but it's important to get a few quotes and compare prices to avoid any surprises. No matter what you're shipping, make sure to pack your items securely. Since your belongings will be traveling a very long distance, they'll need protection against rough handling. Use sturdy boxes, bubble wrap, and packing peanuts, and clearly label your fragile items. I also think it's smart to wrap like your dishes or your kitchenware in your clothing. I did that with my kitchen items, and thankfully nothing came broken. I think clothes offer a really good padding and extra protection, so that's a tip that you can use there. Pro tip as well, invest in high quality packing materials like heavy duty boxes and double walled packaging for delicate items. This can make a big difference in keeping your things safe during your journey. If your belongings end up arriving before you've secured permanent housing in Vancouver, you might need to store them temporarily. Vancouver has plenty of storage unit options. Some even offer climate control, which can help if you're worried about humidity or temperature fluctuations. You should look for storage units with good security features like 24/7 surveillance and easy access, so you can feel confident knowing that your things are safe while you finalize your move. The key takeaway here is to carefully evaluate what's worth shipping and what might be easier and cheaper to replace once you arrive in Vancouver. By packing smart and planning ahead, you'll save money and ensure your belongings make it to your new home safely. What we did is we didn't bring any of our big furniture with us because it was just Walmart furniture. So we just sold it or gave it to our friends, and we specifically set aside in our moving budget to be able to buy new furniture. And it made things really exciting because when you're moving, you're so overwhelmed and stressed with a lot of things that I found peace and comfort in decorating my new apartment. Having a plan in place will help your move go smoothly, whether you're shipping just a few boxes or you're shipping your entire household. Something to note, when shipping your belongings from Hawaii to the mainland, the cost can vary significantly based on the volume and weight of your items. For a full service move of a household, including packing, loading, and unloading, prices for a 20-foot container typically start at around $9,000. For a larger 40-foot container, prices can go up to $13,000, depending on the provider and services included. If you're shipping only a small portion of your belongings, using a shared container can be a more affordable option for you as well. The pricing for these shipments depend primarily on the volume of your goods occupying the container rather than weight. For smaller urgent items, you can use FedEx Freight or similar services, which allow you to ship boxes or pallets at a lower cost than a full container. Additionally, shipping times do vary. It typically does take about 2 weeks for household goods to reach the mainland from Hawaii, although that depends on the shipping company and your final destination. If you need to store your belongings once they arrive in Vancouver, many local storage units will offer climate control, which we talked about, and security features, so it's important to look around and figure out what is the best option for you. And last but not least, tip number 6, adjusting to cultural differences between Honolulu and Vancouver. Moving from Honolulu's unique island culture to Vancouver, Washington can feel like a big adjustment. Honolulu has a laid-back multicultural vibe where time flows a little slower and the ocean is always nearby, whereas Vancouver embraces the Pacific Northwest's outdoorsy culture. It's all about forests, mountains, and rivers. In Honolulu, a lot of your time is spent at the beach, barbecuing with your friends and family, or getting pauhana drinks after work, whereas here in Vancouver, you'll find yourself exploring more forests, rivers, and mountains. You can swap surfing for activities like hiking, skiing, or kayaking. Vancouver is a haven for outdoor activities, so even though you might miss the beach, there's a lot of other things to do to fill your cup. And speaking of the beach, Vancouver doesn't have any. The closest beach is quite the drive, so you'll have to adjust to a new way of enjoying nature. Don't worry though, the stunning landscapes here make up for it completely. One thing that I noticed immediately when I moved here is that the food and cultural scene in Vancouver is very different from Honolulu. While you might miss the poke, lau lau, and plate lunches from back home, there are a few places where you can still get a taste of Hawaii. Check out local spots like 808 Grinds or NoHo's Hawaiian Cafe in nearby Portland for some familiar flavors. There are also Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community groups that host events, so you can stay connected to Honolulu's cultural heritage. My personal favorite event is the 4 Days of Aloha that is held every July here in Vancouver. My first ever 4 Days of Aloha was in 2020 during COVID. They still put the event together, which was awesome, and it truly made me feel like I was back home. Seeing so many people from the islands made me feel as though I made the right choice moving here. I highly recommend joining these community groups not just to enjoy the food, but also to meet people who share similar backgrounds to you. Whether it's a Polynesian culture event or a Hawaiian music night, staying in touch with your roots can make the transition to Vancouver a lot smoother. At the same time, I think it's really important to embrace what Vancouver has to offer. The Pacific Northwest has its own rich food culture and amazing farmers markets, local craft beer, and lots of opportunities to explore new outdoor activities. Even though there's no beach, the rivers, lakes, and forests give you a fresh way to engage with nature. Adjusting to life in Vancouver may take some time, but by embracing the new outdoor lifestyle and staying connected to the Hawaiian community here, you'll find balance between both cultures. And there you have it, 6 essential tips to help you move from Honolulu to Vancouver, Washington. We've covered everything from shipping your car and belongings to moving your pets, and even adjusting to cultural differences and finding the perfect place to call home. Whether you're shipping your things across the ocean or settling into a new neighborhood, planning ahead will make all of the difference. Remember to give yourself time, get organized, and embrace the adventure of starting brand new in a new city. If you found these tips helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more advice on moving, adjusting to new cities, and making the most out of your new home. You can also follow me on Instagram at journeywithjazz_ for behind the scenes tips, updates, and more. And before I sign off, I'd love to know, have you ever made a big move like this before? Whether it's across the country or overseas, please share your experience in the comments down below. What was the hardest part for you and how did you adjust? I can't wait to read your stories, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye!